I just interviewed the epic New York Times bestseller, CPA, financial literacy expert, Sharon Lechter. You know her from the Napoleon Hill series, from the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. This woman has decades of experience and passion helping families elevate themselves through strategy and through mindset. I can't wait to share this interview with you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. My guest today is an epic New York Times bestselling author, entrepreneur, CPA, and financial literacy advocate. She co-authored Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 1997 alongside Robert Kiyosaki and contributed to more than 14 books in the Rich Dad series. She served as CEO of the Rich Dad Company for over a decade. She is the founder and CEO of Pay Your Family First, an organization dedicated to helping families successfully manage their finances through the creation and distribution of financial education resources. She has also partnered with the Napoleon Hill Foundation to produce best-selling updates of Napoleon Hill's landmark works, including Think and Grow Rich, 3 Feet from Gold, and Outwitting the Devil. In 2008, President George W. Bush appointed her to the President's Advisory Council on Financial Literacy. Welcome to Next Level Healing, Sharon Lechter.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you for having me.
You talk about how success is filling the gaps that people have in life. The gap between what people know about financial literacy and what it takes to survive is huge. And why do you think that is? It's like schools have not taught even the basics.
Well, it's so true. It's criminal that we're not teaching our kids about money in school, and it's something that is a lifelong mission of mine. But you've heard the phrase "the rich get richer, the poor get poorer." That's because we learn our money habits at home, and until we get to the point where we teach every young person, young adult, the personal finance they need to survive and thrive in the real world, that is going to continue being the case because they're learning at home. And you raise up, your parents say things like, pinch your pennies, save for a rainy day, we can't afford it, money doesn't grow on trees. So they grow up in this, during their youth, money negative, money negative, money negative. And so that builds this scarcity mindset. It builds this fear around money. I'm never going to have enough money. And then when you see a little success, that fear just converts to, I'm going to lose it all, right? So that scarcity mindset, we can, as you well know, we can control 3 things: our mind, our thoughts, our words, our actions. And when your thoughts are so bound in negativity, it's going to impact your words, and your actions.
And it even gets worse than that. I mean, I've worked with people that, they firmly believed that money was the root of all evil. Oh, how are you going to attract money when your subconscious mind is programmed to believe that you're good only if you don't have it?
Exactly. And, we have to remind them that the Bible says it's the love of money that is the root of all evil. And so becoming successful just brings out more of who you really are. More money amplifies. If you're a generous and giving person, you're going to be able to be more generous and more give it. If you are a greedy person, you're going to probably be more greedy. But it's that love. It says what's inside of you that determines how you impact the world.
And you're able to help so many more people if you yourself are abundant, yes?
Exactly. Absolutely.
So you have had so many decades at just the top levels of this arena. What was it like in the beginning? Take us back. When did you first realize that this was a need? How did you get partnered with Robert Kiyosaki? How did that all take place?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I've been around a long time, so I'll try and give you the Cliff Notes version. But I was raised in a home, lower middle class, by parents who were entrepreneurs. We lived in a little tiny house between my dad's used car lot and my mother's beauty shop. We owned rental properties. I had to scrub out bathrooms at the age of 10 between tenants. And so I've been in real estate since 10, I say. And then we owned orange groves. My dad would say, Sharon, the oranges are my cash flow, but that property is going to grow in value. And that property is now part of SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida. So we talked about money at the dinner table. We talked about assets and the importance of investing in assets, not just chasing a salary. And I was one of the very first women. Well, I was first generation to go to college, first woman, only woman in my accounting classes. One of the very first women in public accounting back in the late 1970s. And so I had tremendous experience in public accounting because I learned how companies succeeded. And probably more importantly, I learned how many companies failed. But through all that process, I realized how few people understood money the way that I did, how I was taught. And I realized how many people were afraid about money and afraid they're never going to have enough, afraid they're going to lose it. And I started recognizing that dichotomy, but then I started on the journey of entrepreneurship myself and had my husband, and we've been married 46 years, had kids. They didn't like to read, met the inventor of the first talking children's book. The books had those sound strips down the side. So I built that company with the inventor around the world, learned all kinds of things about international distribution and licensing because it was technology. Kids didn't have technology at that point in time. Dinosaur days, I know. But and so we did licensing deals with little companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, Sesame Street, Marvel Comics, and we were able to explode that business globally and get kids excited about reading again. And so we sold that company and I moved here to Arizona. Our oldest son went off to college and got into credit card debt. Now, I was mad at him, but I was more mad at myself. I taught him about money, but we didn't know he got credit cards. He got to campus and there was a table, free pizza, free money, another table, free t-shirt, free money.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you.
So he had a really good time his first semester in college, but at Christmas he found out that money wasn't so free and he was in debt. And so we wouldn't buy him out of his debt, but it took him 7 years to get out of debt and to repair his credit. But he's as passionate as I am. But that was December of 1992. And that's when I dedicated the rest of my career to financial literacy and financial education. And so I started working with school systems. My hair used to be red, but working with school systems, it's now white. Fast forward a few years, my husband, who is a well-known intellectual property licensing attorney, called me and said, I met this guy today that has what you've been looking for. You know, I was from stage. I'll share that story. And I go, ladies, what would you if your husband called you and said, I met a man today that has what you've been looking for? I still remember the phone call and go, this is kind of sounds kinky. What more? But Robert had come into Mike's office in his flip-flops and Bermuda shorts with this idea for a board game. And so I attended the very first beta test for the board game Cashflow. I was the only one that got out of the rat race, but I loved it because it was very consistent with what I was teaching and what I was trying to get into the school system. The understanding of investing, the importance of assets, the difference between an active and a passive business, real estate stocks. And so I just volunteered as a friend to help Robert commercialize it because I'd just done all of that with the talking books and we did games as well. So I had all the connections, had all the opportunities. And he told me he wanted to charge $200 for the board game. I said, that's kind of pricey. We're talking 1996. So maybe you should write a brochure that explains your philosophy that would then encourage people to invest in a $200 game. And he said, well, why don't you write that with me? So we actually wrote the brochure together and he asked me to become his partner. And the brochure we wrote was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Most people don't understand that we never expected Rich Dad, Poor Dad to be, have a life of its own. But our company was called Cashflow Technologies. We thought that was our brand. The world said, oh, no. So that started a 10-year partnership. We were equal partners. And as you said, I was the CEO of the company because I had grown a business. I knew how to do it. And we ended up writing 15 books together and a myriad of other products, different games and different infomercial products. And then I launched the series Rich Dad Advisors, another series of books with content providers. And so in those 10 years, we built the world's largest personal finance brand. We ended up in 110 countries, 51 languages. It was incredible. And that's kind of how that all came about. And 10 years into our relationship, he wanted to go into franchising. Great model for us, not a great model for the franchisee. So I made the decision to leave. And so I share my story with people, saying sometimes you have to close one door for other doors of opportunity to open. And had I not made that decision to leave, I really thought Rich Dad was my legacy. But somebody upstairs said, no, there's more for you to do. And as you said, I got a call a few months later from President Bush asking me to be on the very first President's Advisory Council for Financial Literacy. So I served Bush and Obama. And I would never have gotten that call had I still been a Rich Dad. And then in March of '08 is when I got the call from the Napoleon Hill Foundation asking me to help reinvigorate the teachings of Napoleon Hill, because many people didn't know who he was or had never heard of Think and Grow Rich. So I had that. I certainly wouldn't have had that call had I still been a Rich Dad. So I went from building the world's largest personal finance brand to being asked to step into the world's largest personal development brand. What an incredible honor. I read Think and Grow Rich when I was 19. And so that began the journey with them, 4 books with them. You mentioned a couple, 3 Feet from Gold, Think and Grow Rich for Women, Outwitting the Devil, Success and Something Greater. And I've gone on to speak around the world globally. I wrote a book with Inc. magazine called Exit Rich. I just in January released a new book called Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth. I'm very excited about it because as Rich Dad, Poor Dad redefined how people think about money, Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth redefines how you look at the term wealth. So.
I love that. I love that. I love that. For those people who aren't familiar, and I've read 3 Feet from Gold and Outwitting the Devil. The history behind Outwitting the Devil is rather fascinating because it was thought to be too blasphemous to be put out at the time. That it was thought there was going to be so much of a backlash from the church that it was buried for, I want to say 20, 30 years.
73 years they got buried, yeah, because Think and Grow Rich was released in 1937, which was a 25-year initiative by Napoleon Hill. And he was frustrated when he released it because he said, here, I'm giving you the thesis for success, and people will not take action. And so he added that last chapter, 6 Ghosts of Fear. But even after it was released, he was still frustrated. And so he sat down in 1938 and in just a few short months wrote Outwitting the Devil, as you said. And his wife worked for the Presbyterian College, and she was afraid she was going to get fired, so she forbid it to be published. So it got put in the vault. He died in 1970. She died in the 90s and fell into her sister's hands. And she died in, I think, 2012. And that's when the foundation got it. And they called, and we had just released 3 Feet from Gold. And they called me and said, we have this manuscript. We don't know what to do with it. And they sent it to me, and it was really an incredible experience, Tara, because I got this manuscript. It was typed on a typewriter with handwritten notes in the margin. So it's like I was having a personal conversation with Napoleon Hill. But when I read it, I said, this has got to get out. Even though it was that old, it was so pertinent for today. So again, I think there was a higher power at work saying, this book is not ready for the world, or the world is not ready for this book, but now we need this book. And so a lot of young people today, I tell them, read Outwitting the Devil first, then Think and Grow Rich.
I love that we're having this conversation. For 23 years, I did acupuncture and nutritional medicine. And then when I found out how powerful the mind is for just healing of all kinds, including money blocks, I've been doing this 100% of the time now. When you look at somebody's financial struggles, it's often said that strategy is 20% of the game and mindset is 80% of the game. Would you say that's about right when it comes to getting from where you are to where you want financially?
Well, It depends on your circumstances, but I certainly don't disagree with that thought process. People have different layers of mind control, right? Some people, as Napoleon Hill says, 2% control their own thought process, 98% people don't. And so if you don't control your thoughts, how can you can't control your money? Because when it comes to money, you're either in control of your money or your money's in control of you. But mindset is a huge factor. And, we're taught to get a paycheck. We're taught to exchange time for money. And so it's not even a mindset, it's a habit. That's the habit we're taught. We're taught to, if we need more money, get a second job or ask for overtime. And so you have to break that habit that's been programming. It's a programming, what's programmed in, and say, there's something else. And so I teach people. The Cashflow Quadrant was our second book with Rich Dad, and it shows employees, self-employed on the left side of the quadrant, which is you exchanging time for money. On the right side is BNI, business owner, investor. And that's what I teach. I teach people how to get from the left to the right side of the quadrant. And you do that through assets. Happens to be my favorite word on earth, assets. And I say assets are sexy, and the older you get, the sexier they become. But it's when people can change the programming. And so with every dollar you get, you have a decision to let it flow through your fingers or reinvest it in yourself. Buy, build, and create income producing assets, because you're financially free when the income from your assets exceeds your monthly expenses. But a lot of it also is that programming, and also, I'm sure you're going to agree with this, who you hang out with, your environment. And so if you're hanging around with a lot of people that are not pushing forward or not trying to better themselves, they are in that cesspool of negative thinking related to money. It's hard to break through. You got to recognize it first and then say, I'm going to take a step outside, because you're in this comfort zone of discomfort, but it's what you know, so you stay there. And so when you recognize, take that first step, which is often the hardest, you realize what's possible. And you can start changing that programming and therefore get out of the negative mindset, the scarcity mindset, and reprogram to an abundance mindset. But it's not easy. And that's why it's so important. Who are you hanging out with? Are you hanging out with people who have an abundance mindset? It makes it a lot easier. People who are going to challenge you and support you and be able to get that your mindset from negative to positive, scarcity to abundance.
And in Outwitting the Devil, would that be under the category that he called drifting? That when we're not taking agency over our own thoughts and actions, that we find ourselves drifting?
Exactly. I love the concept he introduces in the book called Drifting. And it's really, if you think about somebody that you know that really doesn't have a lot of mind of their own, you ask them what they want to do, and their answer is whatever. They go with the flow. They don't want to make waves. They don't want to do things different. And I always challenge people. My mantra is, why not? Why not do something different? Why not take the path less traveled? Why not solve a problem? Why not serve a need? That is the path to discovery, building businesses, and to abundance mindset, right? You can do more.
Or they tell you what they don't want, which is just as bad, because then that's what the mind focuses on.
Yes, yes, yes. I always tell people, instead of saying I can't afford it, which is negative, you want to get under the covers and turn off the lights. Change your words. Again, words, thought, your thoughts, words, actions. Change your thought from I can't afford it to how can I afford it? You feel the difference? How can I afford it? Opens your mind to the possibility. Your subconscious goes to work. It challenges your entrepreneurial spirit. And it's like magic. Well, all of a sudden you start coming up with ideas on how you can afford it.
And it is truly like magic. I've seen people, even successful people, who are doing all the right things, but it's just such a struggle, and they're just not able to put the pieces together. And then you get to that subconscious block, rewire it, and then all of a sudden it's just like this invisible backpack has been lifted off of their back. It's a wonderful thing to see. So Robert Kiyosaki and you did a great job of clarifying the assets and liabilities. What would you describe as the biggest assets and the biggest liabilities when it comes to our emotions and our thoughts and our beliefs?
Well, I think the The best way I can describe that is through the personal success equation that we introduced in the book 3 Feet from Gold, which was the first book that I did with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Because you have tangible assets and you have intangible assets. And so, but when you're looking at creating a successful future for yourself, you combine your passion and your talent, right? Passion, love what you do what you love. Well, for me, my passion came from anger, but that's okay. Passion and I was mad we weren't teaching kids about money in school. So passion and talent, years as a CPA, years in publishing. But most of us stop there thinking we have to do everything on our own, that we are the only asset that we can deploy. And that's such a myth. True success comes from when you combine your passion and your talent with times A, power of association. Who are you working with? Who's on your team? Do you have people on your team who are strong where you're weak? Do you have a mentor? A mentor who can accelerate your success. They step into your role. They open the doors. They introduce you to other channels and opportunities for revenue. And then times A, taking action. How many times did we know what we're supposed to do? We just don't do it. So taking action is a huge issue. And then all of it wrapped with a plus F, faith. Faith in yourself, faith in what you're doing, faith that is needed and necessary, and faith that you will succeed. And that combined gives you your personal success equation. However, most of us, that F is fear. That fear can either paralyze you or motivate you. The vast majority of us, I'd say 98% of us, are paralyzed with fear. So first we have to recognize it. And I help people take that fear and turn it into energy, into fuel, and into faith so they can keep moving forward. But when we talk about assets, it's, what is your body of knowledge? Okay, do you have the skills you need? Do you have the right network of people around you to be able to move forward? And do you have a definite purpose? Outwitting the devil, the first step to get out of fear. What's your purpose? What is your definite purpose? I'm as passionate today as I was in December of 1992 to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. And I've had a lot of steps in that direction through Rich Dad, through the Napoleon Hill Foundation, Exit Rich. All of these things help me accomplish my mission. And definite purpose, a lot of people don't know what their purpose is. They don't have a drive. And so that definite purpose is your greatest asset, because you can always get off track, but you can recalibrate when you know what your purpose is.
So what are some tools? I'm familiar with Dr. John DeMartini's work. He has a whole thing about values and, connecting to your telos, which is written about by the Greeks. What are tools that you recommend for somebody to unearth what their true purpose is? Not what their parents want or what society wants for them, but what they really authentically drive them.
Right. Well, we work with our clients because sometimes we think we have a purpose, but it's basically our passion for the moment, not our deep-seated soul purpose. And so it's good to have a mentor that can help you analyze that and search it. And sometimes we fancy something, but it's not really our purpose. Sometimes, I have a dear friend. He's a billionaire. His company that he sold was a cardboard box company. That was not his passion, but it helped him fulfill his purpose, which is helping nonprofits and being able to travel. So again, you have to be realistic about what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. And then a lot of times you need a mirror, and a mentor is a mirror to help you understand and ask those questions for self-discovery. That's why I do the personal success equation. At personalsuccessequation.com, I have an entire workbook for you to go through to help you determine what your purpose is, to help you determine who's in your circle, who do you need to add, maybe who do you need to pull out of your circle. And so we do another exercise with people about who's in your front row. Imagine you're on stage. Do you have the right people in your front row? Or are there people in your front row that need to be moved to the balcony so you make room for people that can truly help you and encourage you to take to the next step? So we have a myriad of exercises and things that we do with people to help them discover the path that's right for them, because one formula is not going to work for everybody. You got to have that feedback and be able to support them on their journey.
And we've both seen technology and the tools that technology offers go through a myriad of changes in the last many decades. AI is coming on with a storm right now. What are your thoughts about that? What are the pros? What are the potential cons? What are your thoughts about how that's going to impact the next few years?
Well, AI is here to stay. So, I mean, you can try to resist it, but that means you're just digging in and you're being stubborn. AI is here. The issue is to understand the security issues around AI. And, one of my biggest assets is intellectual property, and I help people identify, protect, and leverage their intellectual property. And that's also got the highest risk when it comes to AI. A lot of people are creating their twins or digital twins, and they're uploading their content, and they're not protecting it, and so they're losing their copyrights. And the Copyright Office came out with a pronouncement last year in January. Anything produced by AI is not copyrightable. And there are people out there, there's companies out there saying, I'll write your book in 3 days using AI. Well, that's fine. You may own the book, but you can't copyright it because it's not yours. And so using AI, I use AI all the time for research, for suggestions, for ideology, but I put it in my own words. I make it myself. And so I think it's very important for people to know what their ownership is. There are now lots of AI agents that can be created to help you on things within your company, but you have to put in the right kind of guardrails to make sure that they can't access sensitive information. Right. Same thing in the medical field. Huge issue as it relates to HIPAA. You've got to make sure you put guardrails around it. And a lot of people are jumping into it head first and not doing the right precautionary issues to make sure they're protecting their intellectual property.
Wow, that is huge. So looking at kids growing up today with all the screen time, what do you think are the most important adjustments that could or should take place so that we can have more self-agency? You talked about how only 2% of us actually have full or a good amount of agency, and 98% are not in that category. How does one know which category one is in? What symptoms does one exhibit if one's in the 98%?
Well, I think when you talk about kids, I talk to people all the time as parents. Are you a mentor or an enabler? The vast majority of parents in today's world are enablers, not mentors. And so I always use the classic science fair exhibit as an example. You walk into a science fair, your kid's in 4th grade, and you can immediately see which exhibits mom and dad did, right? And your kid is struggling, so you step in to help them. Well, are you helping them do it, or are you helping them by doing it for them? And you think, I'm being such a great mom, I'm being such a great dad, I'm thinking their kids are so appreciative that I'm supporting them. Well, in their kids' mind, they're thinking, I don't have to do it myself. And in their mind, they may be thinking, well, mom and dad they don't think I can do it on my own. And so you're not actually helping them, you're disabling them. And the next year they go, forget it, you'll do it. All right, I don't have to do it. And so that's being an enabler versus being a mentor and being a cheerleader, helping them get their project done, but letting them feel responsible for doing it. Same thing when it comes to money. My example of the can't afford it with how can I afford it? If your child comes and wants something and your immediate reaction is we can't afford that. Stop yourself. and say, okay, Johnny, Maria, how can you afford it? And kids get very creative with coming up with ways to make money. Allow them to make the money and buy what they want as long as it's legal. Celebrate with them, because the greatest dividend is the self-confidence you see that they develop in the process, and that self-confidence. Once a child knows they can make money on their own, there's no stopping them. And so that self-confidence is very, very important. We also teach kids, we have a game called Thrive Time for Teens through my website, SharonLechter.com. And it is an incredible tool to teach kids about every decision you make is either going to drive you to success or not. And so it challenges kids, and they have to make decisions about what they're going to spend their money on, or whether they want to buy a business, or whether they want to buy real estate or stock. But every decision has consequence. And so it teaches them those consequences with play money. And the kids will be within a few minutes say, my parents need to play this game. It's won all kinds of awards. But the issue is that part of it is we teach them a concept called BFAB, right? Back straight, eye contact. Our kids don't have eye contact anymore. A firm handshake, ask questions, and above all, be bold. And so BFAB, back straight, eye contact, firm handshake, ask questions, be bold, is an acronym, but it really is the essence of having a child learn their own self-confidence and the ability to stand tall and be proud of who they are.
I just love this. And it's so much neural conditioning, because when we think the right thoughts and we have the right behaviors, we get positive outcomes. And then if we just celebrate those things with people we care about, then we get all those great chemicals being released in our brain, and then our brain just wants to do more of that.
Exactly. Absolutely. You are so true.
How have you seen all of this play out in your family over the years?
Well, I'm very proud of my family. They're all doing great. And my daughter has become a national expert in dementia care, and she loves what she does. She's an angel on earth. Very proud of her. My son is a top executive in a digital marketing company. He loves what he does, and he works very, very, very well with people. And I have a grandson who's in college, who just called me yesterday. He's got a new business that he started. This is his fourth or fifth business he started. So allowing your kids to see what's possible, and not putting blinders on them, I think is really important.
How would you say the challenges that faced young people, I don't know, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, on through to present day, how has it changed throughout the decades? Has it fundamentally changed, or are the challenges similar?
Well, I think there are always challenges. And typically your generation are facing similar challenges. So you're in a group of people that are facing similar challenges. But I think what really has changed is the dynamics of the family. So many more single parent households, plus so much more access to information. So the parental unit influence has significantly changed over the years because of life, and the fact that a lot of single family parents have to work all the time, so they're not home with the kids as much, or the kids are on the internet all the time and they're getting that kind of influence. So it's really the influence factors have changed significantly over the decades. And I think it's really important. Parents must be much more vigilant today than ever before about what is the influence that their children are getting, what is the information they're accessing, and make sure that you are counterbalancing that with good parental guidance and good morality, making good choices. And instead of taking your kids out to dinner and having them on their phones during dinner, you actually are having a conversation with them.
And what would you say are some of the constants? Because it's pretty impressive that Napoleon Hill wrote this book so long ago, and it's still providing such a support for and guidance for so many people.
Well, I think the constants are, morality, quite frankly, and as Napoleon Hill says, if your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. So the power of the human mind is a constant. The messaging is, what are you reading? What are you inputting? And Outwitting the Devil, he talks about definite purpose and then learning from adversity, self-discipline. Those are pretty constant things. And they said the power of your environment. Back then, it was an important issue. It's even more important today, as we've just discussed. What is the environment? Who are you listening to? What are you allowing in your brain? You know, we talked briefly before we did the interview about COVID. And, you know, when COVID hit, a lot of people decided to just sit on the sofa and watch TV all the time. And you know, Napoleon Hill talks about, what's your environment? Well, what are you feeding your mind? And then also, how are you spending your time? Are you spending your time or investing your time? And so only you can answer those questions. What are you allowing in your brain? And I was so frustrated with all the negativity around COVID. Usually when I get mad about something, I start another company. So what I did was I launched a whole new program called ATMs, Abundance Tips and Mentorship, that I do a daily messaging. It's like, 2 to 3 minutes, a daily positive messaging, trying to counterbalance all the negativity. And if you feel that negativity in your life, turn off the news, stop listening to it, allow yourself to have positive nourishment, because that, even if you may not be actively listening, your subconscious is listening.
I give that advice daily. And it's so important, because really, what are we feeding ourselves? Actually, not only our thoughts, but actually what we're physically putting in our body. So important. I remember when COVID hit, and of course there was the fear of, especially having a medical practice, go inert very quickly. I thought, okay, well, this is an opportunity to go deep within and find out whatever there is to find there. And as you say, one door closes, another opens, and it was a beautiful opportunity to go virtual and start working with people all over the world, which I'm super grateful for. I love to ask this question, Sharon. If you were to go back and talk to 10-year-old Sharon, what would you like to say to her?
Well, I appreciate the question. I get asked that question a lot, and my answer is a little different, because I say, I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through all my successes and my failures. So I'm not sure I would want to go back and talk to 10-year-old Sharon. There's parts of my life I would love to repeat, other parts not. I lost a child in 2012. If I could go back and make sure that didn't happen, I would certainly do that. But I like to get people to say, don't look back, look forward. You're the CEO of your life. You have your steering wheel in your hands, your foot on the gas. You can go anywhere you want to. That's why your windshield's so big. And your rearview mirror is very small, because we're only supposed to learn from the past, not define ourselves. And a lot, particularly women, we tend to carry our past mistakes around like an old sack of potatoes, your backpack you referenced. And so I think it's really important to realize I'm where I am today. My choice, I cannot go back. I can only go forward. So let me learn from the past. I still remember as a little kid, my dad would say, Sharon, you can do anything you want as long as you work hard enough. And he would ask me every night, Sharon, have you added value to somebody's life? And he's been gone 20 years, but I ask myself that every day. Have I added value to somebody's life today? And so that's typically how I respond to those kind of questions, because I've learned we can dwell on the past or we can plan for the future.
I couldn't agree more. And I find that answer that you just gave me is very common among wise people. So it's amazing that we have the challenges we have. And it's like going to the gym. How would you be able to build your muscles if all the weights, weighed 3 ounces? Yeah, it's the heavy weights that we lift throughout time that allow us to grow and develop skills that we can pass on to other people. I love to ask this question as well. If you had a megaphone and the whole world were listening, what would you like to say in 2 minutes?
Well, I would start by saying you are the CEO of your life, and God made you perfectly to be you, not me, not Tara, not anybody else. God made you to be you, and you have a contract on earth, and you have all the tools you need and the opportunity to look forward and find that problem that needs to be solved, find that need that needs to be served. But always remember, to control your thoughts, your words, and your actions, and you'll create a better tomorrow than today.
I love that. And what are you most passionate about in the next 3, 4, 5 years coming up for you?
Well, right now I'm doing primarily a lot of speaking, speaking around the world, and I love to do that. I love to be able to impact audiences wherever I go, and I always do my research to find out what that group is looking for and doing. My number one priority are my top level mentoring clients. I keep about 15 top level mentoring clients where I'm helping them take their business to the next level, looking for new distribution, new revenue systems, trying to strengthen their business in case they want to exit at some point. And so that really gets me excited, and I love doing what I do with my high level clients. Certainly my latest book we're in the middle of promoting right now, which is Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth. And so I invite anybody to come visit me at my website, SharonLechter.com, or email me info@SharonLechter.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, I am so delighted that you've joined us here today. I just wanted to ask you one last question. When you move people from fear, which is such a crippling, blinding, dense emotion, into something that's more positive and taking action, what do you feel like are the biggest tools for that?
Well, I think it's first to recognize the fear. All right. A lot of us try to ignore it, get past it. I go, listen, whenever I feel like I'm worried, I have a definition to worry is to pray for what you don't want. I challenge myself, okay, Sharon, because I still have my little worry storms. I catch myself and I go, instead of focusing on what I don't want, let's change my thoughts and focus on what I do want. And it truly is magical because you're going from negative to positive. And so I help people say, when I'm in that, I go, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, got it. This is what I would do, but that's not going to happen because I'm going to change my frame of thought. And I help them look at where their fear is based and help them actually realize that it is an emotion, it's not a fact. And when I realize that it's an emotion, not a fact, you can start dealing with it. Because I always say high emotion is low intelligence, right? And so fear puts you in a state of high emotion. And so let's start talking about what it is. It is an emotion, it's not a fact. Let's see what the facts are and what the next step you can take to get a little further from the fear. And as I said, turn that fear into energy and that energy into fuel and focus so that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish.
And that's an interesting trick, though, taking something that is so constraining and turning it into fuel. I find that a really interesting concept. Can you give us an example of somebody you worked with that was crippled with fear and then all of a sudden they turned it into fuel and what that might have looked like?
Absolutely. I have a client that she was fearful about her business, and she was afraid of her own shadow. She didn't like to speak, she didn't like to do anything, but she had a lot of opinions. And so we started talking about it, and I go, what is it that you're frustrated about? And she owns a fire prevention company, and she was angry and very fearful about what the state was going to do in their regulation because it regulated a lot of her business. And so we started picking it apart, and I go, well, do you attend the meetings? No. I go, well, maybe you should so that you can see how you can have an input into what the state's doing. And as a result of that process, she started finding her voice. We worked on that as well. And she's now on the state board helping rewrite the rules so she's turned that fear into focus and energy, and she's now taking action to help not just get rid of the fear for herself, but for other people in her industry.
I love that. That is beautiful. Sharon, you are an absolute treasure. I am so delighted that you joined us here today. Is there any other channel, tool, website that you would like people to know about?
Well, thank you very much. I would just welcome anyone to reach out to me. I'm Sharon Lechter on all the social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and just reach out to me here. As I said, my email info@sharonlechter.com. We'd love to serve you. We have a myriad of products and books to support you, but I'd love to just hear what you're doing and how we can support you.
Thank you so much. And folks, if you know somebody that would benefit from this information, please share this episode with them. Click subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and we'll see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing.
This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.